This year, the presidential debates promise to be like no others, and in the middle of these potential free-for-alls will be the moderators. Past performances and recent comments by one of this year's moderators have raised questions about exactly what their role should be. No one can accuse Fox News anchor Chris Wallace of being a pushover.
How can you win in 2016 when you're such a divisive figure?
That's probably why he's been tapped to moderate one of 3 presidential debates. Still, when it comes to moderating, Wallace has a low-key approach.
If it succeeds, when it's over, people will say, you did a great job. I don't remember you ever even being on the stage.
But when asked if he'd call out a candidate for saying something patently false,
that's not my job. I do not believe that it's my job to be a truth squad.
That response caused some consternation, especially in light of this week's Commander-in-Chief Forum on NBC.
I was against the war in Iraq because I said it's going to totally destabilize the Middle East, which it has.
Critics pounced on Matt Lauer for giving Trump a free pass on that falsehood, a claim that has long been proven untrue. But off-the-cuff fact-checking can be perilous, as CNN's Candy Crowley found out in 2012.
It took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir.
Crowley was correct, but placed herself in a crossfire of a bitter partisan dispute that rages to this day. If there's any truth, it's that there's no right way to moderate.
No cheers, applause, boos, hisses.
Retired PBS anchor Jim Lehrer, who moderated over a dozen presidential debates, was often criticized for not being tough enough.
So I'm going to get the first word in the next segment.
But Lehrer knew the deal, calling it an honor to be asked and a completely thankless task. I can appreciate what Chris Wallace is saying. I've moderated debates and discussions for many, many years. You know, you're not going to jump in and say, that's not true. But if it's something that it is a matter of record, and somebody is saying something that has already been proven to be, yes, it is your job to say that. And Matt Lauer should have done that. He should have said, well, actually, for the record, you said, I have to give kudos to Megyn Kelly, who did that to Trump during her question. He said, I've only said those things about women, about Rosie O'Donnell. And she says, no, actually, you've said that. She had her facts with it. Mm-hmm. So, and that was what got them in that whole back and forth that went on for months anyway. But so, yeah, I think it is occasionally the moderate, but it's a case-by-case basis.
Mm-hmm. I think you'd find we probably would agree with that. I think it's important that journalists play something of a role, maybe not the fact checker right at the moment, but at least making sure that the debate goes forward with a common set of understand these are the facts we go with. Yeah. But just I'd quickly say, somewhat in defense of Chris Wallace, although, by the way, I think other issues should disqualify Chris Wallace from any of this, given that Roger Ailes was his mentor and Roger Ailes is now advising the Trump campaign. But I think the way he was describing it is that a debate by its very nature ought to be between the two contestants, and that if one contestant says something to be challenged, it's up to the other contestant to come back at it, not the moderator. So I think by and large that's a good operating principle, but I also think you shouldn't let a clear non-fact stand.
By the way, Chris Wallace works for, I know this is kind of a difference without a difference, but he works for the Fox Network and not the Fox News Channel.
Okay, well,
they're
maybe
two different
that is,
operations, and he's on.
But Ailes is still his mentor.
Yeah, he's his mentor. That's not true, because actually, a guy named.
That's him saying it.
Right.
That's we're quoting him. Yeah. Okay.
Look, and I think is it the role to be the fact checker? No. I mean, there are others. They do things after the debates. There's always a spin room, and everyone is going and doing their fact checking. But I do agree that there are times when it is such a major issue that everyone knows is false. You have to step in and say something. I think the problem with what Candy did is how you say it. She referred to, yes, he's right, almost getting on the side of Mr. Obama, when she should have said, well, isn't it true that, right? And I think that probably it's just a slight difference, but how you frame the question to make sure that it's accurate, what they're saying, I think is very important.
Well, I have no problem with the way Candy Crowley handled that, and frankly, I don't have any problem with Chris Wallace going ahead and moderating a debate. I mean, he's an honorable person. I don't think he's going to let his ties to Roger Ailes get in the way of anything. I do want to say that The Matt Lauer thing was very different because it was an interview.
It wasn't a debate.
And there was no one to call Trump on his lie except Matt Lauer. I mean, ironically, Hillary Clinton had preemptively pointed out that Trump has been lying about his support for the war in Iraq. But at the time that Trump actually said that lie, Lauer was the only one who could have called him on it. There is a respectable point of view that a debate moderator should allow the candidates to call each other liars, and it really isn't the moderator's prerogative. And the amount of trouble Candy Crowley got into for saying something that was absolutely true may show the wisdom of that approach.
Okay, so having moderated a lot of these things, I fundamentally disagree with Chris Wallace. I agree that Megyn Kelly did it correctly, but also Candy Crowley. I take your point about in the moment, could she have rephrased? And this is the only little teeny bit I will give Matt Lauer. Live is very intense. And so in the moment, you're trying to think of this. But to your point, Hillary Clinton had just said he's been lying about this and lying about this. So what he could have easily said is, isn't it true, as Hillary Clinton just said, that you blah, 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 and that's okay. Now let me tell you who did it and who did it so well. But that's because she knows her subject. Martha Raddatz, she asked the same question 15 different ways. Go back and look at it.
I saw that.
The same question, but she came back with different information. Isn't it true that you're wearing a multicolored dress? No, I'm not wearing it. Okay, isn't it true you were sitting next to Dan? I mean, she came back, she had every single piece of information. And so she was giving us, the listeners, all the truth in the question because she kept adding more and more context to her question. She was absolutely, that was the best moderation I've seen in terms of that. That's because she knows that subject in and out. And to some degree, I would say Anderson Cooper did a pretty good job on one of those debates. Now, let's just say this, because this is an elephant in the room that has not been discussed. What the hell was Matt Lauer doing instead of Chuck Todd? Chuck Todd, I don't care, debate, question, interview, however you want to phrase
That was
it.
the network.
That was his job. And if he had been sitting in the chair, he would have known to follow up. That's ridiculous.
They wanted to make it entertainment.
I
can
understand
answer that for
I'm
you.
just calling it out because nobody's been saying it.
Amen.